Okay, I'm live. Hello and welcome. Today we are going to be doing a 7-sentence story from the story titled The Lady or the Tiger. I hope you've had a chance to listen to this story on Saturday Stories, or perhaps you're familiar with it from another time. Whatever the case, we are going to dive in and write a 7-sentence version of this story. Now, you might think, why would we want to do that? Why bother writing a 7-sentence story? Well, we can have some fun with the language. And I was thinking about this. Have you ever been to one of those painting parties? You know, where they have a picture and everybody paints the same picture. They just get instructions step by step. And everybody's proud of their picture at the end. Some people hang them on their walls. This is kind of like that. We're going to take this story and we're going to bring it down to 7 sentences where we can capture the essence of the story. This will help you understand story structure. And when you understand story structure, this will help you in both fun kind of fiction writing. It will also help you with nonfiction writing, because if you start looking for story, you will see it everywhere. Even your emails tell a story. They all have some element of story. There's always a problem. There's always trying to figure out how to solve the problem, and then hopefully some sort of resolution. Whether it's satisfactory or not, there is an arc. So without further ado, I'm going to share my screen and let's write this 7-sentence story. All right. One moment. I'm going to share over here. Perfect. And I'm going to go to the webinar that is also running, and I'm going to share my screen. Share my screen. 7-sentence story. There we go. Let me try this again. Not sure why that's not sharing properly. We are going to keep going. Here we go. 7-sentence story. So on your screen, you should see the 7-sentence story framework. Let me see, is that going to do it? Share screen. There we go. Perfect. So the first thing we're going to do is introduce the characters and the setting. Now, who is in this story, the lady or the tiger? Who is in the story? If you look at if you have a copy of the Close Reading Guide, it has the story and we can skim it. We're going to do a lot of skimming when we write our 7-sentence story. And who's in here? We have obviously the lady. So I'm going to put the lady here. Lady. And we have the lover. We have the king. And then sort of secondary. They're not really full-on characters, but of course we have a lady and a tiger. Thus, the title. Where does this take place? If we're looking at the story, it is going to give us that information super quick. In the very olden time. So right away we know we're not in modern day. So we're in olden times. So that's good. And because we have a king, this makes sense. Olden times, and we have the semi-barbaric king. That's good. And we might just leave it at that. It doesn't tell us specifically who or where the story takes place, other than very olden times. And we are going to be in an amphitheater later on. But for right now, we're going to leave it at that. Something happens. All right. The inciting incident is the thing that happens that if it did not happen, the story could not move forward. So when you're thinking about the inciting incident, you ask yourself the question, if this did not happen, would I have a story? If this didn't happen, would I have a story? And for the story, The Lady or the Tiger, that is, and if we look at the story, here we have, they're setting it all up. We understand that it's this semi-barbaric king, and he has this way of poetic justice that he thinks is incorruptible and impartial. So this is setting up the whole scene. Okay, that's fine. I guess you could say if he didn't have that system, we wouldn't have a story. But what event? And the event that triggers this whole story is the princess has a lover that the king doesn't approve of. He's not going to approve of anyone. But that's not the problem. The problem is the king finds out. So on our 7-sentence story framework, we're going to put here, the king finds out that his, and we don't have to use this many words, that his daughter has a lover. So she's got this boyfriend that she's really attached to, and the king finds out and he says, you know what, we've got this system of justice and nobody should dare to love my daughter. Therefore, we're going to use this same system of justice. It's good enough for the people and it's good enough for my daughter's lover. Like justice will be served one way or the other. All right. Now, what happens that causes the main character a big problem? So that's fine that the king finds out, but the big problem is that this lover has to go through this justice system that the king has created. So let's figure out how we can put that in here. So the lover is subject to king's justice. That is a big problem. And so now we have to try to solve the problem. So we have a couple of sentences left. They're going to try to solve it. It gets worse. They're going to try to solve it again. It gets worse. Finally, it's going to be solved in an unusual way. Now, when you're writing an outline, it can be sort of an organic process. And if we already know what we want to write for some of the further sentences, we can put those in. So let's see down at the end, how does the story end? Well, if we look at the very end, the author comes out and talks directly to the reader and says, Her decision had been indicated in an instant, but it had made after nights and days and nights of anguished deliberation. Okay, the question of her decision is not one to be lightly considered, and it is not for me to presume. So at the end of it, we don't know. Who did the lady choose? Did she send her lover to the lady or the tiger? We still don't know. Kind of a perplexing end. So the concluding sentence shows the character in a new situation. We're not sure. So the reader is left to make decision. All right, now let's jump up here. The problem is solved in an unusual way. And here we go. The lady tips her hand to the right. So how is that an unusual way? Well, I guess actually the unusual way is also lady or tiger. We wouldn't say that's a usual way of solving a problem. Now, the main character perhaps is, what if we said the main character was this princess who had this lover? Her big problem is, oh my goodness, my lover has to go through this justice system my father has created. So now she's going to try to solve the problem, but actually makes it worse. So she is thinking about, what if he gets torn apart? So what if he chooses the tiger? And she's struggling with this. She's wrestling with this. And she says, here we go. So she gives us both sides. And here we go. What if he was torn apart? Where did it go here? How often in her waking hours, so here we are, just highlight that. How often in her waking hours and in her dreams had she started in wild horror and covered her face with her hands as she thought of her lover opening the door on the other side of which waited the cruel fangs of the tiger. So she is wrestling with this decision. But then she thought it's probably worse if he gets the lady. So she is thinking about lover with other lady. That is, in her mind, worse because he won't be with her, will never be with her. And so she's saying, is it better for him to die at once and go wait for her in the blessed regions of semi-barbaric futurity, or be in the arms of this other woman? She's not sure. So finally, after months or after days of tormenting thoughts and dreams of both sides, she makes a decision. But as the reader, we're not told what that decision is. We're left to make it. But she does make a decision, and she moves her right arm, and her lover goes to that door. So that's how the problem is solved. Lover goes to the door. All right. So as we're writing a 7-sentence story, first you go through and you jot down the main ideas so you have an outline. And then we're going to go back now and create sentences for each of those. So let's do that now. Here we go. All right, the first sentence is always challenging. It's always hard to write the first sentence. It doesn't matter how long you've been writing. So we're just going to write an ugly first sentence that gets it started. Now, this story sort of starts like a fairy tale. Where are we here? In very olden time, there lived a semi-barbaric king. So we could do a once upon a time. We could keep it simple. Once upon a time in olden days, there lived a, I don't know if she's beautiful. Probably. They're always a princess who had taken a lover. Is that, I'm not sure if that's exactly how I want to, who had, let's say, fallen in love with a commoner. Let's say that. Once upon a time in olden days, there lived a beautiful princess who had fallen in love with a commoner. Now I'm going to make that a little bit bigger, and let's make it blue. There we go. Now, something happens. One day, the king found out that about this, about his daughter's lover. Or let's say, when the king found out about his daughter's lover, he was enraged. Okay, let's go with that. And change the color there. Good. Now remember, when you're writing your 7-sentence story, just like when you go to the paint night and you're making that painting, we're not looking for a masterpiece. We're looking for the general idea so that, you know, when you paint the picture and it's a sunset, people can tell that it's a sunset. When you write this 7-sentence story, people are going to know, oh, this is the story, The Lady or the Tiger. All right, number 3. The thing that happened that causes the main character a big problem, and we said that the problem is the lover is subjected to the king's justice. All right, so we need a sentence about that. We just said he was enraged. And I'm going to go read that part of the story so I can get a feel for the emotion around that. So, when a subject was accused of a crime of sufficient importance to interest the king, a public notice was given, and then on the appointed day, they would go to the arena. All right. And all the people would be there. So do you see how we're just skimming through looking for an idea? And he describes it all the way through here. This is The Lady or the Tiger is not set up just because his daughter was involved with somebody that he didn't like. This was how he handled everything. So the problem was that the king is going to use this same system. But the king would not think of allowing any fact of this kind to interfere with the workings of the tribunal in which he took such great delight and satisfaction. No matter how it turned out, the youth would be disposed of. So he said, I don't care how it goes. All right. As usual in such cases, she was the apple of his eye. And she loved this guy. This love affair moved on happily for many months until one day the king happened to discover its existence. He did not hesitate nor waver in regard to his duty. So immediately the youth was cast into prison. All right, let's see, what can we do here? The main character. So when the king found out about his daughter's lover, he was enraged. the lover was immediately thrown into jail, and what did they call it? Something was scheduled. Let's see here. And a day appointed for his trial, and a trial scheduled. Trial day scheduled. All right. Remember, we're not writing a masterpiece. We're writing a 7-sentence story to get an idea. So if somebody were to read this, they would go, oh, I want to read the actual story. This sounds really interesting. So when the king found out about his daughter's lover, he was enraged. The lover was immediately thrown into jail and the trial day scheduled. Dun, dun, dun. What is going to happen next? So here we have now the princess thinking about, what if he's torn apart by the tiger? The princess was, if I say beside herself, that's not really what I want to say. Let me think here. Had nightmares of her lover being torn to pieces by a ferocious tiger. We could start with that. We might change it later. Again, first draft, messy first draft. So we did the outline. Now we're doing a messy first draft, but it's going to be logical because we created the outline. And then at the end, we can do any tweaks. If you want to really polish it up after, you can wait for a day or so, come back to it, and then you'll see things with fresh eyes. And you can, swap out vocabulary and make things more interesting. Now, the main character tries to solve the problem again, but makes it worse. So I could say, but when she thinks about her lover in the arms of the other lady, she is, it said something about her being jealous. I'm going to go back to the story so I can get a feel for the emotion. Let's see here. It talks about, yes, not only did she know in which room stood the lady ready to emerge, all blushing and radiant should her door be opened, but she knew who the lady was. So she knew who the lady was, and she had seen them talking together. She is jealous. Jealous, jealous, jealous. And, let's see here. She is something with jealousy. And sometimes when you can't think of the word that you want to use, put a placeholder and you can come back. You don't want to stop the flow of creating the first draft. So I'm going to leave that X in there for right now and keep going. So, but when she thinks about her lover in the arms of the other lady, she is perhaps overcome. Maybe that's the word I want to use. Overcome with jealousy. Now she solves the problem in an unusual way. On the day of the trial, let me just say here, when her lover looks to her for an answer on the day of her trial, she flicks her arm or her hand to the right. Okay, so we know that she's made some sort of decision. Super. And finally, the reader is left to make the decision. Was it the lady or was it the tiger? When her lover looks to her for an answer on the day of the trial, she flicks her hand to the right. Did she did she no, maybe I don't want to say that. Which sometimes if you're not sure, write a bunch of different things. What was his fate? Yeah, that's really weak. Did he open the door to the lady or the tiger? That's kind of weak as well. Let's see what else. What could we say? When her lover looks to her for an answer on the day of the trial, she flicks her hand to the right. Her lover eagerly opened the door. That's going to go somewhere else, and then I'm going to need another sentence. That doesn't work. Did she lead him to the lady or the tiger? Yeah, I'm going to leave it with that because the story leaves you with a question. Sure, we'll go with that. So do you see how we can quickly create a first draft? Now I'm going to combine all of these and we'll see how it plays out all in a row. And then we'll be able to do a little tweak and see what we think. The other beauty of doing a 7-sentence story is you'll be able to see the story structure and then think, I have a character that I could use in a similar situation. And you could change the characters, change even the setting. Maybe you want to make it modern day, change the dilemma, but the premise of the story is still the same, this impossible decision. And it will inspire you to write your very own story. But you don't have to start with all of the ideas on your own. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and one more. All right, so let's see how our 7-sentence story turned out. Here we go. Once upon a time in olden days, there lived a beautiful princess who had fallen in love with a commoner. When the king found out about his daughter's lover, he was enraged. The lover was immediately thrown into jail and the trial day scheduled. The princess had nightmares of her lover being torn to pieces by a ferocious tiger. But when she thought, so I need to change that to thought, about her lover in the arms of the other lady, she was, so we want those subject verbs to agree, she was overcome with jealousy. When her lover looks to her for an answer on the day of the trial, she flicks her hand to the right. Did she lead him to the lady or the tiger? And that's how we write a 7-sentence story about another story. Thank you for joining me today for the 7-sentence story workshop. I hope to see you next week when we do another one. Until next time, keep reading and writing.